part where we were discussing storytelling, what the digital and the physical have meant, and then moving to the future of how the residency is opening things up for the artists. I'll begin briefly with what my experience has been with the digital and physical, primarily starting with pre-pandemic. And I think something that we all did was to attend something and travel somewhere, but what the pandemic ended up doing was thinking in a very digital space where it wasn't only about creating, but it was also about creating. It was also about just finding ways to be in touch with each other. And initially, I think everyone was logging in or signing up for every possible thing we could because there was no end to how we could arrive at being in touch again. And something that did strike me with that was a sense of haptics. And with haptics in a physical sense, it really was about touch. But when we talk about haptics, it immediately connects to this idea of the screen and to this idea of how we need to touch a digital form to be able to interact with it. And during that period, I was speaking with the Serenity Arts Festival team initially for a physical project, and then we started talking about how that would convert into a digital form in 2020 because there was no sign of things opening up. And when thinking about what the physical and the digital could mean separately, something that was at the core of it was this idea of experience and how experience could be something that could also, and haptics as a form, be translated into a digital form, and that's how Future Landing was born, where everything was worked from scratch and the artists created things. Everything was only activated via an experience. And soon after that, when we moved into 2021, this idea of slowly things opening up, more with physical, which I'm sure all of you also experienced in some way. Bringing that to the two wonderful artists who are here, we've been talking about what the digital and physical has meant for them. And also how when this idea of moving back into travel and all of us being in a physical space, what it's meant to think between the digital and the physical, and how the intersection with experience has always been a key form or a takeaway between these two spaces. I'd like to ask all three of you to respond to this and draw parallels and differences between these two with reference to your larger practice and also how you all think about this as artists and practitioners moving into your forms of
Thank you so much, Veerangana. So I feel, the digital and the physical, for instance, they both mediums have very different experiences to offer. With my practice, I feel it started off from being more analog, and which is why if you see the installation which I've created during the residency, it really combines the digital and the analog aspect. So also I feel with physical sort of works, it allows you to touch, go closer. But for me, what digital has really done is to get into the nuances of my work, layer it, and also play around with mediums. So I think it really allows me to layer my work more and make it more interactive. When I was working more in the analog zone, I felt after a point that my work was kind of getting trapped in my journals or in a physical form. And in my memory, my work and my stories live with me always in an audiovisual format. It's got something to do with my background in filmmaking. And I think it's really digital, which has helped me just put the stories out in a very whimsical format, exactly the way they live in my memory and in my archives. Yeah.
So for me, I think the difference between digital and physical and also how they interact. For one, on a purely practical level, using digital work has helped me really deal with the problems of being an illustrator. Something that is always wanted by clients, like super fast and can be shared really fast. So if I was to be painting on a canvas or like how I used to do illustration way back, like say 15, 17 years ago. I would have to draw a pencil sketch, take it into another software, like it was really, like now it's so fast. So if somebody wants something in a day, they get it in a day. So that's one thing that I really like, is the shareability and the speed by which I can produce something. So my ideas and like it getting shared with the people around me, whether it's spectators or anybody, like my followers, anything, it's just super fast. And that to me is a great because I'm an extremely impatient person when it comes to seeing results. So that's a huge deal. The other thing about I can say about it is because of the pandemic, I got like so many digital jobs from like tech companies and things like that, which really, really helped in my portfolio. And I actually made a lot of money in the pandemic, unfortunately. I really kind of enjoyed that time in my career. But I think what really happens over there is that we kind of force people to see digital as a viable form. Like we had like a whole jump in terms of, say, like digital was, and interacting with people, we were doing stuff with digital media. But when we actually went into the pandemic, we had a huge expediting of this sort of thing. It just sped up like crazy. And I think that was great because now no one can ignore it. It's become something like that. And I also cannot ignore it. So I have a different experience with digital and physical. I definitely enjoy physical analog work also because you smell the paint and you feel the fabric if you're doing like textile work or something like that. But digital also is like amazing in terms of the speed and everything like that. And there's also like the brightness of colors and all of that is the portability of say like an iPad or something like that. All of these things like really, really help. So for me in my practice, that's how I look at the difference between the two.
Well, I was very lucky to have been born in the 80s and exposed to computers in the 80s because I grew up with computers in a very different way because of that. The early computing devices were fascinating things. And over the years and the decades, I've kept in touch with how technology is evolving. And it's just been a part of my life. Like if someone's born in the new millennium, they're exposed to that days after they're born. So this generation, this current reality that exists has grown up with a digital world in parallel. But being born in the 80s was just born at the right time to actually experience a world without all of these things and see how it entered into the space. So I really am grateful and I cherish that, and a lot of my work, I go back to that point. The entry of this digital reality into our lives, because it's evolved so fast that in the next 10 years, it's going to be indistinguishable from general physical reality. That's what I believe. Science fiction writers have been talking about it for a while. We're living through that. So this period is, for me, a historical study, how things have changed over decades. So my practice involves both the early computing side of things, but also looking into the future. Like things like haptics are fascinating to me, and how the digital and physical will eventually merge. When I look at the physical aspect of my work, I'm actually drawing from digital because I was exposed to it since I was 4 years old. And I think most people, even if they have a physical practice in this state, at some point they would have watched a YouTube video, been connected to someone. So I don't think it's possible to really escape the digital reality at this point of time. So once we acknowledge that, I think we realize the difference between these two worlds is very, very small, and it's hard to define where the barrier lies. Unless, of course, you've been born in the 70s and 80s, and people from that era really have seen the world in a different way. So that's how I like to look at it. It's kind of a general overview, but I think it's quite fascinating where we're also headed.
Thank you. Picking up on that, I think something I'm looking at digital as a medium that operates in digital spaces, so to say. There's also, for three of you, how you've integrated storytelling and narrative building into this. There's this transition and interpretation and also dissemination in some way with your works that are on the way on some of what you see now, of how you've used the digital but also transcended into mediums of storytelling with books, of narrative with the works being activated through a digital medium and with sound and really physically being immersed in it. I'd like to begin with you, Gaurav, that something that you mentioned is that technology for you is an enabler in some way. And given that the digital and technology form was not your primary medium, could you talk about how you arrived at your proposal for the residency? And also how the residency and the digital form of your working with the two mediums has brought in various aspects of storytelling and how that may have changed.
So, initially, because I've been an illustrator, and to be very honest, I was somebody who was always overwhelmed or intimidated by technology. The major shift actually happened during the pandemic because I created a bunch of works collaborating with, for example, theatre performers. Because even they were saying that, we are sitting at home, the theatres are shut, we can't perform. There were writers who said that, we were supposed to do this show and it was not happening anymore. So there was a lot of content which was there, and we had to somehow, like as artists and as writers or poets or whatever, filmmakers, we had to come together and figure out a format in which we put it all out and not sort of just keep it stored somewhere. In terms of the proposal, so I feel the transition for me has kind of been very organic, and which is I feel kudos to technology and the digital, because while we feel that it can be intimidating to somebody who's not used to it, I think just the beauty of it is that how easily you can just transition into it. And when I was creating, when I applied for the residency, I have actually been wanting to visit my personal archives. And when I say archives, it's more of literally my iPhone library, for example. It's like just photos of people I've taken, sounds I've recorded. For me, that's my digital archive. It's a very personal, intimate archive. And while all these stories, like just yesterday I was telling somebody that, like they asked me why just 8 stories. And I said, who knows, maybe it could have been 4 stories or 1 story. But the thing is that it could have just maybe been an independent story floating somewhere online. But with the residency, when I was putting down the proposal, I found it as an interesting way to combine it as a series. And as you all will see later, it's actually a set of biographies of ordinary people. And I thought it was an interesting way for me to put together, layer it, because the sound was something that was recorded. There were images which I had already taken over the years. There were some videos that I had shot. So I think it was an interesting time for me to just sit down and say that, hey, okay, all of this material is with me already digitally, and why don't I just put together and create it as a series, as a whole, to tell a story. And of course it can expand, with stories of people. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I would love to take you all to some of the things. So, for instance, when we say digital art, it's not always about creating the art, but it's also the fact that nowadays we can access digital archives, and some of them are open source. It's very easy to access it. And so when I was creating these biographies, I actually wanted to interpret ordinary lives through very classically, those Victorian kind of books. And I just went insane because I realized there was this huge world of material that was available online, to be used. And I went through a lot of early 18th century, 19th century books from different digital archives. So I've actually used that, since I said that my work is very layered, I have worked with a lot of archival material in terms of like book covers, and then superimpose it with my stories, with the people, and with all the elements. Can we have the next slide, please? Again, these beautiful elements, I mean, it's like every day was like just as exciting for me because, these little nuanced things that you see again in like 18th century books. What I liked about this was that, while you feel the texture in a physical book, while I was creating my digital books, I could actually, in a way, bring them alive because, in a physical book, for example, the rose is just a rose and you can feel the embossing. But the moment I take it on the digital medium, I can make the petals bloom, I can make that flower move, I can have some things moving around. So I think it was a treat, and this is maybe just like 1% of the images that I actually came across and some of them, which I created. You can go to the next slide. The reason I put them static here is because I really want you to come and experience the installation and see these in motion. But for instance, the left slide. So this is actually a book which I created on a taxi driver who used to actually regularly drop me to work. And one of the days he just sang for me, and I have a recording of him. And when I was creating his book cover, I thought, why not just use that recording? So you'll actually hear him sing when you see the installation. The left side, now this is what I was saying about nuancing in digital, is for me, a taxi, a Kali Pili in Bombay, is about these, multicolored grapes and, a little photo hanging somewhere or this flower or whatever. Or you always see the gestures of the taxi driver in the mirror. But the thing is, if I have a static illustration, of course it conveys what I want to say. But in my memory, it always lives as the grapes sort of moving, changing its colors, and all these neon-y, vibrant colors. The taxi driver kind of talking to me without looking at me. So I think that's something I really enjoy exploring and bringing alive through the digital media. And I would love for you to come and see the installation. I think it will sort of explain more what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. I think carrying forward the way you may experience the works by activating them with engagement. Mira, with your work, you've mentioned that as a designer, you were always used to creating content based on briefs and approvals and the speed at which things had to be delivered. But that shifted when you were working with the collective and the zines that you made with them. In relation to your work, which you made here in residency, I wanted to pick up two things. One was how you used AR as a tool rather than just being a novelty, but then also how you use novelty as an approach to say chat people, as you discussed, through a psychoanalytic approach by looking at theory and academic research. So could you unlayer that for us?
Yeah, so AR as a tool, I think, when I'm also involved in a lot of the conversations that are happening on Twitter regarding all of, whether it's AR, AI, all of these NFTs. I've been watching the conversation. And I think because, as I said before, this instant shareability that you have, especially because of social media, is like whatever anyone creates can be shared. So that's especially irrelevant to the digital medium. So you're going to see a lot of just people trying out things and a lot of maybe even crappy things online, And I think that's a way for a lot of people to dismiss digital art. And when you look at something like AR, you will see a lot of usage of it, but just more people just experimenting with it. I wanted to kind of elevate that. And in my artworks that are outside, which I hope you guys have seen, I hope you see them later at least, is that the artwork is actually in the AR. So while you have a physical art piece that kind of is, you may pass by it and not realize that you can see it through the AR until you realize that there are other people looking at it through the iPad. You actually see the real artwork and the real narrative through the AR lens. And I think that is a cool way to kind of unlock something or see something through a totally different lens. So we do these ordinary family portraits, and then the hidden psychodynamics are revealed in the AR. And I just thought that was a way to kind of elevate the medium, because I do believe it's not taken seriously. So I really like that idea. And I also, you go and you see the people looking at the artwork. There's kind of like this shock and surprise, which is the novelty of the AR gives them, that, oh my god, this changes. Oh, this is what's happening here. And that like experience of like seeing the light on people's faces is also what kind of like gives me the fuel to go on making stuff. This is especially also after, like as you said, I used to only make client briefs, so it's really nice to be able to use my own novel approach and come up with my own content for these kind of things. And to answer your next question, could you repeat that question? I'm so sorry.
This was to take off from where, rather than using novelty as a tool, how you take novelty as a
trap, sort of. So usually when I present this to clients, I say something like, oh, it's accessible and engaging, but I also think it's a bit of a trap. So a lot of my work that you see, because I show some of the slides out here, they're really fun, they're really colorful, they're really pop. But this actually, a series like this talks about how body image is something that you don't expect women to be this big and this strong and this mighty on ski actually. If you look at like Greek images of these strong men and all that stuff, this is kind of like based off of that a little bit. So I like to kind of present academic ideas of like body image, for example, and feminist ideas through this kind of work. So it kind of hits you in the face, but not immediately. So you're drawn to the color, you're drawn to maybe the novelty of it, the cuteness of it, but then you're also confronted by maybe like, I'm normalizing these images for people in that sense. So I think that is something that I really like to do. Just give them something to chew on that attracts them in the beginning, and then hit them with a harder idea. So some of them just enjoy it on the surface. But I think those who really do want to see more can see more in it. And I think by presenting academic ideas like this through works like this, you can actually get more accomplished with this. So these are some of the images that you see through AR. So you can see this is the family portrait before, this is a physical work, and then you get like a little surprise with the digital work where you have the mother-in-law creeping up on those two. I think that like it's humorous also, but there is an element of like this feminist theme of like how family systems like really work. Like these are real experiences for women who marry into the patriarchal system and then have to deal with the in-laws and being owned by the family essentially that they marry into. So I really like some people can see it just on the surface level, and I'm okay with that. And some people will see it for a little more than what it is. And if it's identifiable enough for them, they will see it for that. So I think that's like a cool way to kind of do that. Honey trap them in a sense. So yeah, there's one more. Here you go. This is kind of like a very aspirational family. Only like hooked onto achievements and winning and making money and showing off basically. So you see them very ordinarily here, but then when you see them through the AR, you're seeing the helicopter mom, the aggressive climb the corporate ladder dad, and the kid who nobody cares about him except for his achievements. Basically, he's kind of fading into the background and wondering what's happening. So yes, this is kind of like the way I like to approach my work.
Yeah, and I think taking from this intersection of technology into everyday lives, Varun, that's something that, as you mentioned, that's been a part of how you've grown up, the synthesis of man and technology, where you almost look at them as synonymous to each other. Could you share some more about how you approach this through your practice, and also more specifically with the work that you've created here, which is more an experience also with movement, but also with suddenly realizing your presence in a space compared to the digital, and how you respond to that?
Well, with dimorphism, the piece that's on display at India Art Fair, a lot of it is about how to present digital work in a physical space, and I think as artists, all three of us have approached that in very novel, unique ways. For me, I wanted to play with the idea of perspective and allow more than one person to experience it at the same time. So that was a real tough ask, and I'm very grateful to the India Art Fair to allocate so much space for me to do that. In the installation, you can walk in and enter a different space, and that was the idea, with as little as possible in terms of color and line to take people into a different world. And I try to keep doing that. A lot of my work I would not call minimalism, because minimalism is its own thing, but the amount of things used to express what I do, I'd like to see it as quite minimalist. The ideas are more about outer space and maximalist ideas. So this piece that's on display is about very big themes, and what I talked about earlier, man and digital and reality, digital reality and material reality coming together. And perhaps I could show a few slides of what I've been doing before this. A lot of my work, you put the volume a bit down. Thanks. A lot of my work is about these bigger themes. This one is about celestial objects and time and space. And you could do this kind of work using traditional 3D modeling, but I chose to use code to do it. Set an object in space, create lights, rig the lights to mathematical movements, to control these things in a more precise way. So the twinkling of the stars at the back, they're essentially a whole bunch of dots on a black canvas, and they're changing in size at a certain frequency. So to actually look at a starry night and interpret it in a sense of like, how can you break this down into code? It reveals something very special about the world, physical world we're in, that a lot of this stuff is coded. You know, there are a lot of philosophers talking about how we live in a simulation. As a coder, it's quite fascinating when you're able to create an algorithm that's mimicking stars, and you feel the power that it kind of gives you as a creator is fantastic. It's almost godlike, because you're creating something so vast in just a few lines of mathematical code. And for me, it tells a story that is not very apparent in my work, which is someone who has struggled with academia for a very, very long time. I struggled with mathematics and things like that. I eventually became an engineer, but I spent most of my educational time really struggling to get good marks and things. So I relate to Mira's work a lot. But then once I discovered art and a way to convert this code into a visual aspect, it made all of these very difficult things beautiful. And I do want to express that when I put my work out there. So a lot of my work talks about that. It's kind of the hidden story behind things. There are a few more. So this is just simple mathematical algorithms. The one on the left has an infusion of color. The one on the right is how I work more often. And I wanted to do playful things with this, so I'm not sure it will be easy for everyone, but this piece turns clockwise or anti-clockwise depending on how you want it to turn. And if you think it will turn clockwise, and if you think it will turn anti-clockwise. It's kind of tricky. It's like those optical illusions where something pops out of the green. So with code, it's really fun to create these kind of things. And this is more about what I talked about, parametric equations, which is a very boring subject, but when you visualize them, they become absolutely beautiful and fascinating. And, the logarithmic functions and things like that. There's something special about them once you visualize them. And maybe I could get to this one later, or should I go through my work? Okay, so this is also very fascinating to me about how to take black and white textures and then extrude it. So in this piece, I've essentially done a digital painting in black and white, and then I told the computer that if it is the color black, then it's all the way on the ground. If it's the color white, it goes up. So these mountains were created when I ran that algorithm. And it's very simple. We use this in computing all the time. But to create these landscapes and digital worlds with just a very simple black and white input is also quite fascinating because it's like coding, but it's not. I think everyone can do that. So this is a more traditional approach to creating the digital world that I do. And yeah, this is something that I really enjoyed doing, which is 3D scanning people, because this is like a new technology that is evolving every day. But once I 3D scanned them, I opened up the files and I actually destroyed them. I took numbers out. And there's a lot of randomization in that. Like, okay, a digital thing, if you destroy it, what will happen? Because we destroy things in the physical realm all the time. But you have to understand how to destroy a digital object. Because if you take the wrong numbers out, then the file just won't open. So it's very meticulously destroyed digital work that creates something quite extraordinary once you're able to visualize it. And this is the piece that I created for the Digital Artist in Residency, the poster. So it was done using the iPad Pro, where I was scanning objects that I was exposed to at the place that I was living. So there are rocks, and there's the ambassador vehicle, which I'm always fascinated by. There are two of them, in fact, and there is a story going on here. I'm trying to tell a story by capturing the essence of material world, pulling it into the digital, and then trying to tell another physical story. So it's kind of going back and forth a lot.
I'm going to pick up on that and also talk about this idea of the loss of control, which I think comes in the moment you put things out there. And I think that happens with creating, because the moment there's something in a public space, you sort of lose control of how somebody else may absorb it or how somebody else may take it forward. But taking from that, this is my last question, after that we'll take questions from the audience as well. Is with the residency and with these spaces, I think there's also a space for experimenting, which all of you have had a chance to do over the past few months. So could you speak about how the residency may have been a space for you all to really open up rather than arrive at an end for ideas, and what it may be for you all in terms of change and the future of each of your practices of the work that you're sharing?
So yeah, for me, I think it's largely been about, like I said, the digital archives that I say, it's very personal. I think it just allows me to open it up and also just create while I'm moving, because I keep traveling all the time. And it just enables me to, this time I discovered because I was away and I was creating for the residency. So it was kind of interesting because I've always only done residencies which are, where I've been in person at the place. So in this case, I was on the move. I was constantly creating, taking things out. So it kind of felt like, I don't know, like it's like when you want, you can work in isolation, and then when you're done with that, you always have the chance to sort of interact and do sort of brainstorming sessions. So So I like that, and I think that's something majorly that I've taken away from the residency, because I know moving on now, I don't have to be static somewhere. I can move around. I can just keep creating on the go, basically. Yeah, I think that's largely been my takeaway. Apart from, of course, creating the artwork itself and shooting elements constantly. In fact, Varun has introduced me to some really nice apps. So we have decided to catch hold of them right after the thing is over and just take a quick go down from it. But I think that's something, because I also realize a lot of things I do in my practice could be done in a more simpler format using a lot of applications and stuff. So it's just the beginning for me, at least, because I am still, I think, starting off, at least with the whole digital and analog mixing. I think I'm still just experimenting the medium. So yeah, it's a great start.
So for me, it's been like, when I was speaking about the shareability also before, I do take a lot of cues from an audience. I have an active audience on social media. And so I see how they respond to things. And often they DM me also, so it's not always even in the comments. Here it was really nice to see physically what people were reacting to, the delight that I always aim for. So seeing that on people's faces was a huge thing for me. And the whole digital residency really allowed me to create what I wanted to create on a much larger scale than I would have been able to do in my own practice. So being able to see your work at the scale and the size that was allowed to me was like a big deal. Using tech that really could do things at that scale was amazing. And yeah, being offered the opportunity to also reach out to the same audience but in person was really amazing. Because you have the hub there, which is showing the work actually live. So that's really nice. Otherwise, I'm usually in isolation, remotely working from some computer like a manic person in the basement. So this was really much nicer to see it in person. That's something
that you find yourself reluctant.
Yes, I think now that I know that it can be executed at that scale, and that's what also gives you that impact, I think I will definitely be doing things at a larger scale. And even collaborating with other people, because a lot of animations were made with other people. That was amazing too. And all remotely done because we had the tech to do it. So all of that is like really good. I think even with my work with Kara Collective, we used to do it remotely in different time zones, and that was great. Coming back to this experience multiple times is definitely a big goal for me. That I'm thinking of the next year of my life very differently from what I was thinking of it before. Less client work, a little more of these kind of things.
Varun and
I find being a digital artist a very lonely profession. And no matter how much recognition you get online, you still feel very lonely. Like, I've been lucky to have a lot of traction for some of the stuff that I did that went viral and a million people liked it and it got shared. But at the end, really there's no connection to them. You might get a nice message and feel good, but you cannot compare it to the opportunity of what we have here. And here, the memories that I have is a little girl walking into my installation and just giving me pure feedback. I treasure that more than anything. Or elderly gentlemen telling me about meditation and asking me if I meditate. To me, this is it. This is the reason to, even if you're a digital artist, it's a completely different thing when you get actual people in your work, looking at your work, talking to you right after they've seen your work, because they're not distracted. I think when people see things on phones and televisions, there's a sense of hyper-focus, but then a lot of distraction. So for me, this is my goal as an artist, to do more of this kind of work and do it in the material world for people, and have as many people see.